And welcome back. Let's dive right in. So we're going to be working with the filter button. Going to select an object and go into polygon mode of the unwrap modifier. Select an element, and if I left click, it will filter that element out. We cannot see it. To bring that back, we left click. Okay. And then we can right click to filter out what we do not have selected, and then right click to bring that back. Now, if you left click and then select other faces and left click again, you're going to bring back those other faces. Okay. Now, if you select all of your faces, or if all of the faces are selected by any other method, right, we can left click and the object will disappear. Okay. So to bring that back, you'd left click. All right. So just be aware that your object can disappear, and to get it back, you might have to left click or right click, or actually Control A to select all the faces, even if they are gone. So you might have to Control A while it's invisible and then click it to bring it back. Now, I know that's a little strange, so I'll add some safety guards in that at some point. All right, so next is overlap. If we left click that with an unwrap modifier on the object, I should say that first, we can see that there's 0 polygons selected because none are overlapping. So let's take this and this. I'm going to just right click that to stack them. Now there are 3 elements that are overlapping in the center. Okay, if I load that back in, we do not see the red tinge too much. Let's turn that up. So what we would do is turn the alpha up here on the color fill. Now when we click it, you can see that there is a shade of red here. Okay. So we have overlapping elements. Now when I left click, they'll be selected. Well, the faces will be selected anyhow. Okay. So we can see that 252 polygons are selected for being overlapping. Now, right-clicking this is not going to do anything because we're not going to automatically solve how you want to fix this. There's no real way to do that besides, if you just repack it or you choose how you want to move things around. All right. So next we have the inversion. Okay, so if there is something that is inverted, and I don't mean rotated, I mean inverted, flipped. So we'll flip this horizontally. You see this is backwards now. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is be in polygon mode. I can have a selection or not. And if I left click, it will select the faces that are flipped for me. Now, if you have an element that's half twisted or half flipped, the system won't be able to resolve that. So you need to make sure that your elements are flattened out. And here we are with this, and it says inverted polygon 60. Now, we do not need to rely on that unless we do have something where the mesh has an issue. So say there was a problem where maybe some texture vertices were stuck together and they were causing confusion with the system, and you couldn't get faces to flip over correctly. You could use left click to find those and hopefully help you find the problem more easily. But if we have a nice UV layout like this, and we just want to fix this flipped element, we can right click. There you go. It just automatically found it and flipped it for us. Okay. Well, these other ones are just upside down. We can take that and rotate it. And there we go. Okay. Now what we're into is this place and stack section. Okay. This is really easy. Let's open up the editor so you can get a better view of what's happening here. I can take this entire set. Let's scale it down for a better representation. If I left click, it will move the selection of the object to that spot. So I could have this down here and this over here. If I have all that selected, I can add it to the middle, or I can add it to the top left. And you see that it is conforming, right? So if I select the top center, we do run out of UV space on each side on the U. We're over 1 on the U, and we're less than 0 on the U. And that's less than 0 and over 1. That's because we're focusing on satisfying the calculation of the placement. Now, if I select the top left corner, you can see we are tucked into that top left corner and overlapping here. I'm just showing you that so you have a better idea of how this works. So let's go back to this. We'll make that selection set. We can place it anywhere we like. Okay, out of these 9 locations. Now, if I wanted to stack all these elements and even different sized ones, right? Let's do this. Okay, I can right click for the stacking method. If I stack here, you can see that every element, I keep saying object, but I mean element, every element has been placed into that corner and they're all stacked on one another. Now watch what happens when we put it in this top corner. See, they're all in the top right corner as far as they can go. Same with the bottom and same with the side. We place it in the center, they're all placed in the center. Okay? So that's basically how that works. It's a place and stack. Now, you can go back to the previous video and learn about the specific stack position, as well as later in the series, we have move, scale, rotate, the MSR. Here we have a special placement tool. Let me just show you this real quick. It's almost the same thing. So if we would like to take the pivot point at the center of this selection and place that at this location, okay, we can position that element. So if I put that 0, 0, you can see the center point is now at 0, 0. If I put this at 1, 1, and there's different methods here. You can use modifier keys with clicking and left clicking and right clicking to add, increment, and all this other stuff here. We'll get into this later. And then we can position there. Now I can change the pivot and actually go to 0.5 and 0.5. Now the top left corner will be placed at the center. Okay, so we can have a lot of different placement tools that you could use. And that's place and stack. So next we have SSUV and the 2 spread buttons. And then we'll move on to another video right after that. So the SSUV button is a multi-use button and it's state-based as well. So if we are using an object as an unwrap modifier, we can then select all of the faces and create a UV blob. Okay. And that's so you have like a blank UV canvas to begin working with. So now I'm going to deselect off and have a true beginning for explaining the SSUV buttons now that we have a UV blob here. Okay. So we select the editable poly object, load it into the system. I'm going to go into polygon mode, turn off back facing, and select the top half of the object. Go to left click. You can see that we broke that off and we solved it and placed it on the map with the specified settings. Now, since it's just one element, the settings don't matter so much, but they do to an extent. Okay. Now I'm going to select the bottom half and I can actually right click. And what that will do is break the bottom off and then select all of the elements, solve all of them, and then pack them based upon the settings here. Okay. Now we can also do this. We can select some faces, and I'm just making a quick example here. So we can select all of those faces. There's some on one element and some on the other. Now, when we click this, it's going to take that selection and make an element, but it's also going to erase that middle seam. And there you go. It also solves it and places it in the UV space. Okay, good. So I can select all of these with Control A and pack them if I like. Or I can go through again and take some faces from all 3 of these elements. Okay, and right click. And what that will do is break it off, make it into its own element, solve every single element in the object, and then pack it. So don't use right click with polygon very often with high poly objects because you're going to end up waiting if you solve every element every single time you right click. So it's more or less better off with high poly objects to select faces or have selection sets, then break them off with left click and just have that solved. Okay. Okay, so we'll continue on here, but there is some information that's important. I'll just touch on the spread button here and the spread button here. One is for a single element, and the other one is for all elements to be spread and packed. Okay. Now, if you left click, it will choose your current chosen UV solver. I'm sorry, I'm trying to talk so fast. It'll use your current UV selected solver. So that's LSCM. And if I right click either of them, it would choose the opposite. I'll show you that real quick. Going to right click spread. We open up the editor window so that we do not crash Macs. Then we perform the spread with that selected UV solver. And there you go. And same with the other one. Now back to the SSUV button. I'm going to go into polygon mode once again, Control A to select all, and make another UV blob, nice and quick. I will now go into edge mode and select those edges by double clicking. Control double click, there we go. I'm going to left click. Now what this is going to do is just break those edges off and create 4 elements, but it's not going to solve them for us. So this is a nice way to take an object and divide it up, but not have to wait for the solving of the elements to be done. So you can go through and cut the object up into pieces, and then once you're ready to solve it, you can go into polygon mode, double click to select an element, and then handle it one by one, or Control A and handle them all separate or all at once. Yeah. 1 second here. That's a lot of information to go through, so I know that I'm talking over myself a few times. I'll hopefully make new videos in the coming months. So let's continue on here. So let's take the faces. We'll select all, and we did a solve pack like this, or we can choose our other packing method, or we can set the default packing method to 1. That way, when we do pack with the spread, we get the result that we want. Let's go back to setting it to 3. That's my preferred method. There we go. I'm going to turn this back into a UV blob, and you'll see that if we go back into edge mode, double click, control double click, you see that we have these various edges selected. I'll turn off the checker map so you get a better idea. Okay. Now if I right click, it's going to break all of those edges apart to create seams. We now have elements based upon that. Then we've selected all the elements, resolved them, or solved them, then packed them based upon our packing settings here. Okay, let's see. What's next? The spread buttons. Let me think. Okay, we have to cover vertices real quick. Let's do that. Let's go into polygon mode and make another UV blob. I will turn faces back on. There we go. So the UV selection works the same as the edge selection. You won't really use this very often, but maybe it's worth using in certain instances. So if I select those 3 vertices, I can left click, and you can see we've broken those edges. We now have 4, 7, 10 seams, right? Now, if we were to have them still selected and I right click, we're going to do the same thing. We'll break those vertices apart to create 10 seams. And then we're going to actually try to UV map the object, just like we were solving it with the edge. So the vertex mode is kind of frivolous in strange ways. The edge mode has its own feature set, which is nice to have. Then the polygon mode is nice because you can just barrel through your UV mapping. Okay. Next we have spread. Let's go right into how this works by making some extra pieces here. There we go. I'm going to give you a quick example of this because I see some distortion here on our solving. That means that the UV or the unwrap UVW modifier has some not corrupted but erroneous data inside of itself. So we can either collapse this object and then add another modifier to clear that out. I'll do that real quick. I'll collapse that, add another. I'm going to go 3, Control A, and we need to actually solve them. So there we go. Now that's cleared up. The distortion is gone. But if you have an object where you have a modifier stack and the UVW modifiers in the middle of the stack and you can't collapse it down, what are you going to do? Well, we need to clear out that, not corruption, but distortion. We'll say distortion is good enough. What we have here is a solver fix. So I'm going to now add some extra channels here. We'll work on this one. I will go into this mode and just click loop so you can see we have a loop on here. There's that in channel 2. Okay. And let me give you a little more information here about this. So the unwrap modifier can become distorted, like I said. And to fix that, we have a solver fix method. What this does is it copies the data or the information for the unwrap map channel over to the new modifier, and then it renames the modifier to old. We can also set it to automatically delete that, and there's more information here if you need it. Well, let me give you an example. So we have the map channel 2 rendered here for preview. We have that selected in the stack. I'm now going to control and left click. I do not have delete replaced modifier selected. So you can see here that I have unwrap UVW channel 2, and there's my data still. And here's my old one. Okay. Now that's not distorted, so this was kind of a rough example. We're working with theoretical things in this moment. But nevertheless, it should make sense. If I run into this issue again while I'm making these videos, I will add this step back into this. It's not something that's very common, but it does happen sometimes. So let's delete this one that says old, and I will do the same process with the delete replaced modifier. So control and left click. Our modifier gets duplicated, re-added back into the system. We're back in the same position with channel 2 and our UV data. Okay. Now, if you're going to use this, make sure that you back up your files before you go through this process, because I don't want you to expect that it's going to work in 100% of the instances out there, because, I mean, how do you guarantee something like that when you're working in a program like 3ds Max? So if you encounter a modifier stack where that doesn't work correctly, let me know. Let me know. I'm always interested to learn more and add more features and fix things. It's just if I have the time to do it now. I'd love to make more time to improve this, and I'd love to rewrite this and improve it overall. Okay, I kind of just winged putting this together. I didn't set forth with a plan. I still enjoy it nonetheless. Okay, so let's get back into this. We're going to now add this back into the system. As I collapsed it down, you can see we have map channels 1, 2, 3, and 4 with number 1 showing. I am now going to turn this into a blob. Left click, control left click, and double clicks. And I'm going to break that off. I'm now going to turn on the checker preview mode. Go into polygon sub-object mode, double click. I will left click spread. You can see we get the LSCM unwrap. It's by current UV solver selected. I'm going to choose the other side, and I'm going to right click spread. This will open up the UVW editor and use the opposite of what is selected for the UV solver. So we have Unfold 3D that was used for this version for the right click. Okay. And if I had this solver selected and I right clicked, we'd use the LSCM solver, and you can see the differences here. Just get these out of the way for you. So if I left click and right click, it's giving me the same thing now. Do this. If I left click, okay, now it's not behaving in the manner we would expect, but let's try that again with the bottom. So if I left click, it's going to open up the editor. There we are. Now it's showing it. And there's the Unfold 3D that's expanding the UV space, right? Now if I take this other side here and I right click to use the LSCM solver, you see that that is now at the bottom there. So there we go. I can now take these and left click. I'm going to left click to spread them all and pack them. And I can go to LSCM and spread them all and pack them, but without opening the editor window. So remember that Unfold 3D requires that SSUV opens the editor window for every function. So it is best to keep LSCM active unless you necessarily need Unfold 3D active. Okay, and this is a quick way to get to that Unfold 3D change just by, right clicking. So if you need to solve something quick and you don't want to go through all the hubbub, you can do that. Once again, left click uses the chosen solver, right click chooses the opposite solver. And the Unfold 3D solver is only available in Macs 2022.3 or newer. So if you're using an older Macs version, then note that you will not be able to right click to get the other solver. It will just work with LSCM. Okay. And that's good for this video. We went through these 3 buttons: filter, overlap, invert automation. We have place and stack, SSUV, and the 2 spread buttons. Let's get into the next part of the panel. Hopefully we can cover the rest of these in the same amount of time this video took.